We're holding Kuv Gimel Amud Aleph. We're holding 5 lines into the Amud. Yes. We're quoting the end of the Mishnah, that the Mishnah gave a klal that whenever you do something, and that's the final thing necessary, in other words, it's a type of action that you do to a utensil, type of something, part of the process you do to a utensil, and milachto miskayemes. Sometimes people leave it that way. If people leave it that way, you're chayiv for makev patish. Now, that was the example he brought. He said the kedeach kolshu, no matter how small it is. So, yeah, that's what makev patish means. And that's what mesates is. So why do we have to say zeh haklal? Usually, if any other detail would be obvious from the example mentioned in the Mishnah, then you don't have to say zeh haklal. We'll make our own comparisons. The fact that we say zeh haklal, that means that there's something that we would not think on our own, and only through adding zeh haklal, then we add it. Says the Gemara, zeh haklal la'asuye imai, what is it coming to add? Says the Gemara, la'asuye, it's coming to add the chok that he engraved, kafiza, he engraved, let me just see the exact, what's it called? 1 second. Yeah. There's if he has a piece of wood that he could make a kav, which a kav would be 4 lug, and he made only 3 lug. He dug a hole smaller than what you're able to make in this particular keli. So you would think he didn't finish. He dug a hole. You could use it, but you wouldn't leave it that way. It's such a thick wall on the side. You would dig some more. You would engrave some more. You would carve it out more. No. The chak kafiza bekav, in a keli that he could have engraved a kav, he made just a kapiza, just 3 lug, 1/4 less. But some people leave it that way. So even if it's not the most you could use out of this, even if it's not the most common usage of something, but if malachtoi miskayemes, if some people leave it just the way it is, then you're already chayiv. Fine. That's what zeh haklal is coming to add. Okay. Then the last part of the Mishnah, Reb Shimon Gamliel said that if you bang with the hammer on the anvil, that yes, then you're chayiv. Now, seemingly at first glance, banging on the anvil doesn't help you. Doesn't help at all the thing that you're making. So how come you're chayiv? Reb Shimon Gamliel Eimer Hamake bekurnas al asadon. If one bangs with a hammer on the anvil, my ka'ovid, what is he doing? So Rabbi and Rav Yosef, they both said, Rabbi and Rav Yosef, he's training his hand to work better on the utensil that he's making, and therefore it's like part of the process of making this utensil. Kashu ba bnei Rachba. The people of Rachba had a problem with this, or maybe the children of Rachba. Bnei Rachba, maybe the children of Rachba. Elamiyata, if so, training yourself is considered a malacha? What if chazo umnasa b'Shabbos? One who watches a professional on Shabbos, v'gomar, and he learned to just by watching, you're like, look, he's doing something very nice. Now I know how to do it. So he trained himself by watching a goyisha worker on Shabbos, a goyisha tradesman, and he was watching him, and he learned the job. So he's chayiv. For you to learn a job, that's a malacha. Malacha is to make something. So you trained your hands. So what? I mean, it's not a thing we do on Shabbos. It's uvdin dechoil, but it's not a malacha. Hachinami di mechayiv. If you learn a trade, you would be chayiv. You're training your hand. You're chayiv. Ela Abaye v'Rava Dami Tarvayu. No, it's a different thing. Shekain miradete tasi mishkon oisim kain. Those that would make smooth the planks of metal, of gold in the Mishkan, to cover the beams. They would have to have a very thin layer of gold to cover it. They would bang it with a hammer to smoothen it. And part of the process was you bang 3 bangs on the metal and then 1 on the anvil and so on. That's part of the way how you could make the metal smooth. Without that, it's not going to work. So you're fixing the metal by banging the hammer on the anvil. Now, it seems that since it's just a small detail within the process, it wouldn't necessarily make you chayiv if it wouldn't exist in the Mishkan. Since in the Mishkan, they had used this method, because that's the method you use to coat something with metal. You have to make it very smooth, and you have to bang it with a hammer. And for that, you have to bang it on the anvil, and it helps smoothening the metal. Therefore, since it wasn't the Mishkan, and it's useful for the product, yeah, then therefore it's considered a malach. Tanya Nami Hochi, there's a brayse that they found afterwards. Interesting, it's a Tosefta. The Tosefta, people knew. I don't know why they gave another explanation before, but the Tosefta clearly says, Reb Shimon Gamliel Oimer, Af Hamaka Bekurnas al Asad, and even if someone who bangs with this hammer on the anvil b'shas malacha chayiv. Why? Shekain meradei tasei mishkan oisim kain. Because in the Mishkan they've done so. So since it helps the actual metal plank in order to be smooth, it's considered the malacha, and especially because it happened in the Mishkan. Fine. So that's why we explained it earlier, and that's what the Gemara explains. Short.
It's not smooth, it's thin.
Thin. Thank you. Okay. So we are done with this Makeh Patish. Interesting, the order of things in the Mishnah is very, very interesting. The fact that we went on the shiurim of carrying, we can understand maybe because they're very long, and then we're going a bunch of details, but it's not going in the order of the Mishnah. The Mishnah started off with Chodesh, and here it's going first to Boina Makeh Patish, then it's going to Chodesh. I'm not sure the reasoning for this order, but okay. Fine. Could be Boina is something a bit more complicated because you have to know how to differentiate between Boina and Makeh Patish. So I guess after carrying, which is many details, you go to Boina, which you have to pay attention a bit to know how to differentiate, maybe. And then it goes to the more simple stuff. And then I guess it starts from the beginning. HaChodesh, one who plows kolshu, there's no, what's the measurement? Anything. HaMenakish, one who pulls out the weeds or the thorns. VaMekarsein, one who breaks off or cuts off dry branches from a tree. VaMizorin, one who cuts off fresh branches from a tree, but it's too much. And it's too much, and it makes the tree, it draws out all the strands of the tree. You have to cut them off sometimes in order to let the tree live.
Trim.
To let it breathe.
Trim.
Yeah. So kolshu, all of this, the measure, the size is anything. There's no specific size. Anything works. Fine. Okay. Hamalakit eitzim, one who gathers dry pieces of wood from the ground. Malakit would mean, it seems like it's not just that you're gathering it and it's a problem of ma'amir, of pashat gathering. Rather, he's picking up dry weeds from the ground. So it's like it's cunning. It's toilish, to a koitzer, seemingly. But it depends what you're doing it for. Im letakin, if you're doing it to fix the ground in order that it should be, yeah, it depends. Could be dry wood from a tree or from the ground. If you're doing it that it should grow better, kol shein, it's the smallest amount. That could be either chodesh for the ground, or that could be zereya for the tree, because you're helping it grow. And then the smallest amount helps. So no matter what you pick out, you're chayiv. Im lehesik, If you're doing it to get fuel, burning wood, so then not every small amount helps. Then it's considered koitzer. You're cutting something useful, and then it has to be useful. So how much is useful? Kadei levashel beit sakala, enough to cook the smallest useful thing, which is frying the size of a dried fig of a chicken's egg. Hamelakit asabim, one who gathers grass from the ground. Im if he's doing it to fix the ground, so that's chodesh kolshu, the smallest amount is already considered fixing. Im the behemoth, if he's using it to feed his animal, kimloi piagdi, the smallest size. Which animal eats grass? Typically, who's it intended for? It's intended for goats, and therefore it's the size of a goat's mouthful. Now, it seems in the Mishnah that it all depends on the person's intention, which that might be a bit puzzling, because if a person has his own field and he's taking out some grass, let's say, to feed his goat, but at the end of the day, it's his field, and he's happy that he cleared some space. So why should it be potter? Because now I'm doing it to feed my animal, but I gained something else as well, and I'm happy about that. Why am I potter? Okay, we'll see in the Gemara. So the first understanding of the Mishnah is that it all depends on your intention, but we'll see in the Gemara that that's not necessarily the case. Fine. Says the Gemara, plowing a small amount, what for? Lemay chazi. What does it help? What is it useful for? Says the Gemara, chazri, it's useful. Lebizra dekra, for one seed of a butternut squash. It's useful. You can plant in the smallest amount you plowed, you can already put there one seed. Now, Rashi says that earlier we said that people do not take out one seed in order to plant. You're right. They don't take out one seed in order to plant, but when they prepare the ground for planting, Rashi says they make each hole on its own. I don't know what that means. I don't think the farmers go and make one small hole for one seed of a butternut squash. Yes, Rebbe David.
This is what they do. They actually make a hole, drop in, and cut it. Make another one. You have an inch. They put a distance, and they just put a hole. There's a difference between plowing for spreading it or planting for specific vegetables.
Okay, so, very good. That fits very well what you're saying. What you're saying fits very well what Rashi's saying. So that's the way they plant vegetables. They make a hole and they fill it in, and therefore one hole is already useful. Very good, thank you. Now, the kavase gabi mishkan, again, since this is not a typical thing, I would consider something very important, because maybe, as you said, although they make one hole and they plant it, but they do a bunch at a time. Make a hole and they plant, a hole and they plant, a hole and they plant. They don't usually spend their day making one hole and putting in one seed. So although they do it one at a time, but why is it considered important? In the Mishkan, they did the same process. The plants that are used for dye are made, I guess, in the same way. You plow, you make one hole, you fill it in, and you cover it. And therefore, since that is the process, they did it in the Mishkan, it's considered important. Fine? Okay. Very good. Next. If you pull out all these dry weeds or twigs, or the fresh ones, in order that the tree should be able to breathe, so it says the smallest amount you already chayiv. Tanu Rabbanon. Hatoilesh ulshin. One who pulls out of the ground ulshin. Can you help us with the translation? It's a certain type of plant. It's one of the
very bitter
plants for the morer. Endives.
Very bitter.
Endives, yeah.
Endives, yeah. It's kosher for morer. So if one pulls out endives, or one who pulls out dry twigs, so it depends on his intention. The Mishnah said it about gathering wood. It didn't use the word mizarid. But here the Baraisa uses the word mizarid, And it says seemingly that it depends on your intention. Im la'achilo, if you're gathering it for you to eat, I guess the andives could be eaten. Oh, these rodin, these weeds, when they're fresh, the people eat them. I don't know exactly what type they are. If someone give me a translation for zrodin,
Not even just twigs.
twigs, but
It could be
it
anything.
sounds like it's a type of twigs that when they're fresh, they're fit for human consumption.
Says
So if
reeds.
you're pulling,
Says reeds.
reeds. Are there reeds that people eat? I don't know, but I guess there are some types that people eat. And if you're gathering it for people to eat, kigrigenis, then it's the size of food, which is a dried fig. Even the behemoth, it's for animals' food. Kimlei piagdi, then it's the smallest size for an animal, which is for a goat's mouthful. Imla hesek, if it's for a fire, kadilav ashel beitza kalo, in order to fry a chicken egg. Imla yapis es akarka, if it's to make the ground smooth, kol shein, then the smallest amount is chai. So think, hold on 1 second. If you're going to your field and you pull out a twig, it's your field. You benefited the ground. So atu kulu loyli yapis es akarkanino. Aren't all these cases clearing the ground? The rule is psik ratio. If something happens automatically, vin nichale, and he's happy with it, then everyone agrees, even Rabbi Yehuda, which usually says, Malacha she'eino tzricha legufa, your potter, he says this is tzricha legufa. You're happy with the result. You know it's going to happen. You're chayav in a Torah. So you're happy with the result. So who cares what you had in mind? Yet another thing happened as well, and you're happy about that. Says the Gemara, you're right. When the Mishnah and the Brisa says if he did it for this or for that, it doesn't mean if that's what he had in mind. It means if he did it in a way that the only benefit is the particular benefit. How is that possible? So he says, Ba'agam shonu. Whenever it says that he did not have in mind to clear the ground, it means that he did it in a place that it does not help him. He went to the swamp. It's not in his field. And he gathered twigs over there. So there he's not helping anything by clearing the ground. That's why he's potter. If he would do it in his field, you're right. He would always be chayiv. So the Mishnah also, the Mishnah says, it depends what he's doing it for. It doesn't mean what he's doing it for, what he has in mind. It means what is the benefit that comes as a result. Sometimes there's no benefit of clearing the ground because it's not yours, it's in the swamp. And not just not yours. It doesn't get better. You're not helping anything. You're not going to be able to plant anything over there. It's a wild place. It's something that you cannot help. Fine? It could be in a field. When it's not a swamp, so it's plowable. It's clearable. How come? Says Abaye could go in the loy come if he does not have in mind. Says the Gemara 1 second. They both said, even Reb Shimon, which says that any malacha that you have no intention to do, you're allowed to do. In other words, if I do something that a malacha might happen, but I don't have any intention to do that, I'm allowed to do the action that might result in a malacha. So, but even he agrees if if it's something which is if you cut your head off, they cut the head off of the animal, but you have no intention that it should die, no, that's not considered not intending. So here also, you're clearing the ground. Who cares what you have in mind? Says the Gemara, no. I didn't mean that he technically didn't have in mind. I mean that he doesn't even have it in the back of his mind. How is that possible? It's talking about when he did it in his friend's field. So his friend never asked him to do him a favor. If he's not going there to help his friend, then that's not in the back of his mind. He's not here in the back of his mind subconsciously to help clear the field for his friend. And therefore, since it's not in the back of his mind, and it was not his intention, he's potter. So that's what Rashi describes actually, and the poskim, the later poskim, today's poskim, like better Rashi's wording for this, because it makes a bit better differentiation. It's called psik resha deloy ichpasle. Psik resha that he doesn't care. He doesn't mind, but he doesn't care. And it seems that Tosfos also, most poskim, some poskim say otherwise, But most poskim say that psik reisha delay ichpas lei, you're not allowed to do, but you're potter. If you don't not want it, but you don't want it, it's potter avalasu. Some say that if it's a derabanan, then it's mutter. If the whole malacha that would be done as a result would be issa derabanan, so then and lo ichpas that you couldn't care less, then many say that's also fine. Many say, even those that say that usually it's not fine, but by a derabanan, so a lot of people say it's fine. So it isn't clear. Generally, the generally accepted thing is that by a deraisa we accept that it's osur. If psik is osur, and by a derabanan the minig is that it's osur. Like by deraisa it's accepted as a halacha, and by the rabbanan it's more accepted as a minig that it's osur. That psik is osur. There's a different thing which is called in today's poskim language psik that's how Rashi describes it, which means that he doesn't want the result. And that many more poskim say that really is mutter, if you clearly are not happy with the result. But here it's like, I'm not happy, I'm not sad. So then the halacha is it's potter aval also. Okay, fine. Okay. Says the Gemara. Next Mishnah talks about the malacha of writing. Hakoisei writing. What's the measure? What's the shear for writing? Shtei oisiyos, 2 letters. That's the minimum that could be any meaningful word. The idea of writing is that you're trying to give over a message. Scribbling is not writing. Scribbling would be tseveya. You're dying. You're coloring, but it's not writing. And I also, it's not useful, then it's not a deraisa. Writing means you're writing something meaningful. So the smallest amount that could be meaningful is 2 letters. And then it's bein bimine, whether it's with your right hand, bein bismoil, whether with your left hand, which is puzzling because your left hand is a shino, it's kalach hayad. And if it's kalach hayad, it should be potter. Fine, we'll see in the Gemara. Bein mishem echod, whether it's 2 aleph, 2 bases. Bein mishtei shemos, aleph, beis. 2 different letters. Bein mishtei samonios. No matter what ink you use, that's what Rashi teaches it. It doesn't matter if you used, one of them you used ink, the other one you used some paint. It doesn't matter. As long as you could read a word, who cares if it looks nice or it looks odd? It doesn't matter. Okay, some people say simonios, fine, that it's even if you make the different symbols, but not necessarily that'll fit so well with the Gemara's discussion. We'll see soon. B'chol Lashon, doesn't have to be aleph beis. Any language chayiv. The point is you gave over a message over here, or you gave the ability for giving over a message. Any 2 letters in any language, in any ink, even if it's mismatched, no matter which hand you use, you're chayiv. Amar Rabbi Yosi said, Rabbi Yosi, I'll tell you a chiddush. Lo yichivu shtei yosis elo mishum roishim. Why 2? Why not 3? Why not 1? It's not because it makes a word. It's because it makes a siman. Shekach koisvim al kashi hamishkon leida ezu ben zug. If you've ever put up a sukkah with boards and you want to know that it should fit the next year, so you put a number at one end of one board and another number at the other board, so you should know how to put them together. So by the Mishkan, they put like an aleph at one board and an aleph at the other one inside where you wouldn't see it, and then they would know how to line them up. They should fit. What is he trying to say? What he's trying to say is, since the whole reason is that it should be a siman, any useful siman you made, you're chayiv. Don't get stuck with the rules. The point is, you made a mark, and it works, you're chayiv. So 2 letters is just an example. 1 letter here, 1 letter there, I can match it. Yeah? So if you made any other mark that helps you, you're also chayiv. Short,
you need 2 marks, not 1 mark.
Usually, in order to make, let's say, two different pages, you want to match them together, then you have to put 2 marks. But let's say you have, let's say, a sefer, and you're learning on Shabbos, and you want to write a correction on the sefer, yeah? But you can't hold yourself in. So you're going to take your nail, and you're going to scratch a line over there to know that tomorrow you should come back and fix that, yeah? It's a problem. You made a useful mark, yeah?
You damage your book.
Okay, leave that aside. But you made a useful mark. So, okay, you're right. From the Mishnah, all I could see is that he says that even if it's a scribble, but it's 2 scribbles, and therefore I could match 2 scribbles together, and I'll know how to match things, that's also chayiv. Doesn't have to be actual words, as long as you know what it's there for. Fine? Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Says Rabbi Yehuda, like this. When we say 2 letters, you chayiv, it doesn't just mean when I wanted to write 2 letters. Let's say I wanted to write Misushelach. I wanted to write Artashashto, some long letter. I don't know what. Yeah? And I just wrote 2 letters from that. I'm also chayiv. Since 2 letters could be something meaningful, even if I wanted to write a long Megillah, but I just wrote 2 letters, I'm already chayiv. We could find sometimes, occasionally, that a word could have a meaning even if it's part of a larger word. Which therefore, I always am chayiv on 2 letters, even if I intended to write more, because 2 letters could have a meaning. Where do we see that? For example, Shem, Shimoin. I was in the middle of writing Shimoin, and I wrote Shin Mem. Hey, that's a word. Shem, it's a name. Or Mishmuel, same thing from the word Shmuel. Noach, Minocher. Don, Midaniel. God, Migadiel. Sometimes I'm intending to write a long word, but the bit of it is already something meaningful. And therefore, even if I wanted to write a long thing, I'm already chayiv for the small thing. Now, there's a question over here because you write Shimon with a regular mem, and you write Daniel with a regular nun, and Shem has to have a final mem, and Don also has to have a final nun. Okay, we'll talk about that later in the Gemara.
What about I in English? 1 word.
Okay. So you'll be chayiv, yeah. You'll be chayiv because it's meaningful. In Hebrew, it didn't exist, and probably in any language those days it didn't exist.
They didn't speak English?
Okay. Says the Gemara, 1 second. I am puzzled. The Mishnah is saying something which the Chayda doesn't make sense. That you're chayiv for writing with your left hand? How come? Bishlam ayamin. I can understand why with your right hand, you're chayiv from the derech ksiva bekach. Because that's the way you write. Ela smoil with your left hand. Amai, why is he chayiv? Derech ksiva bekach. You don't write like that. You don't write with your left hand on cholamoyed. You write with your left hand, although not necessarily do you have to, no matter whatever. Let's get involved in that. But on cholamoyed, you write with your left hand. It's not a regular thing. Now, this is a big question. And really, there's no answer. We have to, all the answers we're going to give, we're going to see that there's no way we could say simply that, no, it's normal to write with your left hand. No, it's not. So, what are we talking about? Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah be'iter yatshon. We're talking about a left-handed person. Nah, that doesn't make sense. If so, then the left hand is the right hand. Then he should only be chayiv in his left hand. How can he say the right and the left? One person the right, one person the left, depending what his strong hand is. We're talking about what do you call it? Someone who writes with both hands is a name for it.
Ambidextrous. Ambidextrous.
I didn't catch it.
Ambidextrous.
Epidextrous.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So someone who's epidextrous, so he's chayiv. Now it's very deichik because the Mishnah should be talking about, if that's the case, then it's not a chiddush. Right? So what's going on over here? Okay. I guess we're talking about that he writes better with his right hand, but his left hand could also write well. So since he writes well, then he's chayiv. Maybe. It just shows you that it was so clear to them that it cannot be that writing with your left hand is considered proper writing, that it must be something else that they find the most deichik answers. That's usually the rule in the Gemara. Whenever you find very deichik answers, is because the foundation that they're trying to explain is like so clear to them that you can't just focus on a detail and change that. It doesn't work. It just can't be. Fine. Now Rav Yaakov, the Bas Yaakov, Rav Yaakov, the son of the daughter of Rabbi Yaakov, or not of the older Rabbi Yaakov, Amar, he said, Hamani Rabbi Yosi. The Rabbi Yosi on the end of the Mishnah, which says, the Amar that he says, he says you don't have to write. You have to make a mark. Writing with the left hand can make a mark just as well as with the right hand. If the point is to write, you don't write with the left hand. But if the point is to make a mark, a left hand can also make a mark. And therefore, a left hand is considered a normal way of doing it. It's just as useful, just by carrying. We said you right and left hand, it's all normal. You carry two bags in both hands. So here also, you make a mark. No matter which hand you use, it's just as good. It's not about a letter, it's about a mark. He says, how could he say that? V'amid sefer Rabbi Yosi, since the sefer is Rabbi Yosi, which is Amar Rabbi Yosi, sounds like a machlokes, Reish Lav Rabbi Yosi. Then they said, then it's an argument. The Tanakam is not Rabbi Yosi. So we don't know. Kula Rabbi Yosi. 1 second. The whole Mishnah is Rabbi Yosi, so he brings on the side over here that there's quite a few Gemaras which say that, which is a bit strange. What's the question? What's the answer? So there's one place that Rashi says that the Tana started off the Mishnah and he forgot who said this halacha. And then in the middle he remembered and he mentioned his name because he's supposed to mention the name. And they documented the Mishnah exactly as it was said. And then Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, when he gathered everything in the Mishnah, he quoted everything just as it was written. So since the name of the Tana was mentioned in the middle of the sentence, so it was there in the middle of the sentence. They didn't move it from there. That's what Rashi says. So basically, I guess it's as if saying like one thing, like no matter which hand you use, no matter which ink you use, no matter which language, and it could even be there's no language. Yeah, it's all one opinion. The whole Mishnah is Rabbi Yosi, and that's why the left hand is okay. If we would go by the opinions which argue with Rabbi Yosi, then we wouldn't say the left hand is okay because you can't write normally with the left hand. Fine. Okay, we'll leave at this. Let's just make a summary over here because the next thing is a long thing that will go with next Amud. So what did we learn today? We started off that the Mishnah concluded that anything which you do an act, and that's the final act, you don't have to do anything afterwards, then you're chayiv. We just said that earlier in the Mishnah. Why do you have to say it again? It's coming to ask something you wouldn't think. If I take a piece of wood that I could make a large hole in the middle to hold a full kav, 4 lug, and I only carve the amount for 3 lug, so I would think I didn't complete whatever I could do, but you completed something which sometimes people leave it that way. And therefore you're chayiv. Then we spoke about banging on the anvil with the hammer. What did you do with that? So Rabbi Rav said you're training your hand. So Rachba's children said, 1 second. Training is considered a malacha. If you watch someone and you train yourself in your mind, it's considered a malacha. Training is not a malacha. Says Abaye and Rava, and then we found it in a Braisa, in the Tosefta, that as part of the process of making metal thin, you have to bang it 3 times on the metal and 1 time on the anvil. Although it's a small detail, but in the Mishkan they did it in order to coat the boards, the beams, and therefore it's considered a malacha. Then we spoke about the sizes, the shiurim for plowing, the smallest amount. Why? Because you make a hole for vegetables, and by vegetables you make a hole and you plant it and you cover it. So each hole is an important thing on its own. And in the Mishkan they did it. The plants that they planted in order to make the dye work the same way, and therefore that's also chayiv. Then, if you take out anything dry or anything fresh in order to clear the tree or clear the ground, the smallest amount is useful. Whatever you did is already an accomplishment. Now, if you gather weeds or dry twigs from the ground, so the Mishnah and the Brisa says that it depends what you had in mind. For food is the size of food. For animals is the size for animals. Then to clear the ground. For wood, then it's the size of wood, which is for frying an egg. To clear the ground, the smallest amount. So what are you always clearing the ground? And you want it. So psik reisha, the nichale that you're happy with, you're chayiv. So, but no. We're not saying if you had in mind. We're saying if that was the result. How is that possible that you shouldn't have a result of clearing the ground? You're clearing a swamp. You can't clear a swamp. You didn't do anything. Then you only chayiv what you cut it for. Abaye says you don't have to go so far. That's a far case. Let's go a simpler case. It wasn't your field. I'm sorry. Abaye first said you didn't have in mind. I said, but 1 second, it's psikration. No, it wasn't in the back of your mind because it wasn't your field. And it's called psikration. The lashon of most poskim delay nichalei, but in Rashi's lashon delay ichpaslei, which is clearer, which means you don't care, you couldn't care less about it. And then you're potter. It's potter avalos. Fine. Then we spoke about writing. So the Mishnah says 2 letters, no matter which hand, no matter if it's the same letter or different letters, no matter which ink, if it's different ink for each letter, no matter which language. And then Rabbi Yosi says it could even be any mark or maybe 2 marks, because that's the way they did it in the Mishkan, or that's what they did it for in the Mishkan, although Mr. used olive base. But they did it in order to match the beams, and therefore anything you come up with to match things together, you're already chayiv. Fine? And then Rabbi Yehuda comes and says that even if that wasn't your intention, you intended to write a longer word, then a small part of that is already chayiv. Says the Gemara, why are you chayiv with writing with your left hand? That's not a regular way of writing, and there's a rule by all malachas that if it's not the way the usual way of doing it, you're potter. And that's the way it works in the Gemara, that if you have a rule that overrides the deal that you will see in the Mishnah, I just can't say this, it contradicts the rule. So when you write, I'll have to be doichik, the Mishnah is talking about a lefty. It doesn't work. Lefty can't be right and left. Okay, it has to be ambidextrous. Yeah?
Ambidextrous.
Which we were saying maybe it means that one hand is better than the other, but he still could write with both. Fine. Comes Rabbi Yaakov, the grandson of Rabbi Yaakov, through his daughter, and he said, no. It's one opinion in the Mishnah. It's all Rabbi Yosi. It's not about writing. It's about making a mark. And therefore it doesn't matter how, what, when, as long as the mark is there. It's all considered normal. But how could he say that? The Mishnah starts off without a name and then says Amar Rabbi Yosi. No, that's sometimes the style of the Mishnah. They state that the Tana remembered the middle, the name of who said it. So he said it in the middle, and we keep it that way. We keep it the way the Tana said it, but it's all Rabbi Yosi, and therefore with the left hand you are chayiv.